Loki, are you okay? You played Resident Evil Village, didn't you?
Now what can be in there that's so... Oh my word, what is that thing?
Horror is not for everyone. Yeah, of course, Halloween is that time of year where people want their thrills and chills, especially in the film industry. And there is a lot of films that can deliver that, namely the iconic Nightmare on Elm Street, as well as the upcoming Halloween Kills. But there are some people with delicate heart conditions, or some people that just can't take very high gore factor. Like, they love Halloween and the costumes and the candy, but they don't exactly enjoy the gore factor that comes with the Halloween films. Fortunately, there are some Halloween films that are a little bit more easier on the eyes for that array of people. So I'm going to go over the top 10 best Halloween movies that are guaranteed not to give you a heart attack. I'm going to focus on this list films that have very interesting Halloween plots that are standalone, as well as coming across as extremely memorable, as well as great classics. Bear in mind, these are my opinions alone, and there can be some spoilers. So without further ado, let's begin. If you're a fan of musicals as well as Halloween's and of course Alvin and the Chipmunks, then this is the idea film for you. There's another one in here, it's a twofer. So with the Frankenstein one, this one was made in 1996 and it focuses on our trio being visited by a crazy doctor who was supposed to be part of a haunted house attraction, trying to come up with a really scary monster for the studio theme park. And of course, no one exactly knows his true agenda. That is until Alvin and the crew got lost in the amusement park when Alvin was up to one of his shenanigans once again. Thanks a lot, Alvin. Anyway, when they finally tried to get someone to help them, they soon discovered that the scientist is actually creating a monster in a secret part of a special laboratory. And y'all know what sort of monster he's creating. That's right, the long-remembered and cherished Frankenstein monster, who chased them after a while and scared the bejesus out of them. But when they spent time with him, they learned that Frankie is just a well-meaning guy who wants to hang out with them and make friends. He was a sweet and sensitive creature, and they did a wonderful job of establishing that. And of course, they now had to protect Frankie from the vicious doctor that created him and risk everything in order to do so. Now, Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman is definitely made out of the year after Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet Frankenstein. This one, of course, focuses on the Wolfman, or werewolf if you want to be a bit more specific. So anyway, Alvin and the crew find mysterious happenings going on. One night during a walk, they soon find themselves being mysteriously chased around by a strange creature. Not only that, but Alvin has been plagued by nightmares of running in the forest and encountering a wolf-like creature. All of it is because of their mysterious neighbor, Mr. Talbot, who seems to be very secretive of how he runs the show, carrying around a silver cane that was made by silver bullets. Oh gee, I wonder if that hints anything. But not only that, things get even more complicated and weirder when Theodore has been mysteriously bitten by a supposed dog, and his attitude begins to change. And not for the better, I assure you. He becomes more athletic, agile, and a bit of a smooth criminal, much to Eleanor's dismay. But the reason behind all that is because he is turning into a werewolf. Like, basically, it proved that there was a werewolf in the neighborhood, and it was starting to get things worse for Alvin, up to the point where Theodore will attack anyone who stands in his way. Even in his puppy form, it was just getting worse and worse. The only way Alan and Simon were able to save their beloved brother is by finding some answers, searching around Mr. Talbot's place, as well as getting help from the gypsy of the show. So, overall, these films definitely seem iconic, as well as they're not completely remembered, but they do have a catchy tune and something with a plot that's easy to follow and remember by. No, I'm not doing this because of the Muppets The Haunted Mansion. I'm putting it on the list because I felt like there was something about the story of its own, even though the Eddie Murphy one does seem to have some complaints through some people. So, to top it all off, the Evers were just a regular real estate family who one day got caught in a storm. However, Mr. Evers thought it would be a good idea to actually go over and have a look at the house that he could possibly sell as a really big deal, because that this is a mass mansion and a lot of people pay for those historical era houses. Unbeknownst to the family that they are in a mystical plot, being watched over by an unknown sinister force ruling over the house, as well as soon learning that they are dealing with a really horrible curse, and that there's a very dark and sinister history that plagues the home. So, of course, we ever soon realize that they're in mortal danger, pardon the pun, but they also realize they're stuck until they can actually get the curse lifted. So they have to get the enlisted help from 2 servant ghosts in order to figure out the truth behind the curse and set all the ghosts free. It's easier said than done because the truth is a very fickle thing. And of course they have to deal with zombies, evil spirits, but overall the ending result is pretty good. Overall, I do feel like this film could be having a few touches in the mystery, but at least the mystery is very intriguing where you're actually invested in the show, as well as what's going to happen next, as well as the fact that in terms of the main villain, Ramsley, it's definitely a very interesting villain. Maybe not the most appreciated villain, you gotta give it some credit for trying to put some thought into his character, because he definitely is very terrifying out of all the ghosts, and the way he manipulates people is an all new level of No, I'm not talking about the female version of Ghostbusters here. I'm actually talking about the 1980s Ghostbusters, featuring our lovable crew from Egon to Thinkman. Yeah, this trio is amazing. Well, I'm also gonna include Wilson in it. Anyway, it started off with 3 college professors who wanted to try to understand the phantasm phenomena, and of course, they soon find that ghosts are real and decide to create their own business. Slowly but surely, things began picking up and they're insanely popular with everyone. Well, with the exception of one politician. But when ghosts start appearing faster than the speed of light, all hell breaks loose. Thus, the Ghostbusters, the greatest paranormal heroes of all time, were born. I put this on this list because even though there's some spooky moments, it really is something to laugh and enjoy about, as well as practically cheering on our favorite heroes as they take on a horde of ghosts, as well as an evil spirit from another dimension. Now, history buffs might like this one. Not only that, but basically many people who are Bradbury fans might like this one too. This is called The Halloween Tree. It focuses on a story on a group of kids who go on a wild adventure with a very mysterious man who had a lot of pumpkins on his trees, and thus learning the history of Halloween. Along the way, they also have to help out their friend Pippin, who has somehow been turned into a ghost, and they have to travel through time to get him back and save his life. How they were gonna do it? No one knows, but it definitely is a wild and thrilling adventure. And again, this is actually based off of Bradbury's book. I am sorry if I'm not pronouncing this right. Anyway, this is basically where this movie definitely helps show of how Halloween first began and the importance it had to certain cultures, not just in certain parts of the world, but everywhere. Egypt, Europe, you name it, they got it. Ah, yes. One of the better films that Cartoon Network had to offer, as well as it was actually based off of a book made by a young woman who wanted to try to spend time with her godchild. Anyway, this focuses on a story named Young Hannah, who is basically afraid of monsters until she meets a scary godmother, or her own fairy godmother, if you will, and encounters a very unusual household while she's in the fright side. And basically, it was all thanks to her rotten cousin Jimmy, who played a very mean prank on her on Halloween, mostly because they just wanted to have some time to do some proper trick-or-treating. Sometimes some kids can be mean. So, he gets way creepy in the sequel, the Halloween Scary Godmother, The Revenge of Jimmy. But anyway, through this film, you get to encounter a wide and crazy cast of characters that make this show so intriguing. From the very regal and very strange vampire family known as the Counts, Orson being a bit of a sweetheart towards Hannah, even though it does come across as a little strange. And of course, you have the wonderful and lively Mr. Pettibone, but usually everyone would call him Scully, and boy is he a delight at parties. And let's not forget Mr. Gluttonous himself, Harry the Werewolf. Oh boy, was he a piece of work. And overall, this film definitely is filled with lots of delights, and it definitely has a lot of color, which is both beautiful, especially considering the fact of how the CGI is so different from what we're used to. Even the stories from Halloween Spooktacular as well as The Revenge of Jimmy both bring off a lot of imagination compared to the kinds of films you'd see for Halloween nowadays. But I feel like it was put further up, mostly because of how it's set up. Paranorman is a Leica film that focuses on a very interesting concept of zombies, even though I'm personally not a big fan of that genre because it's just been overdone so many times. However, this is definitely an interesting turn of events. So here's the recap of the story. So Paranorman focuses on a young boy named Norman who has the power to see ghosts. Unfortunately, since he's the only one who has that power, no one else in his family can see ghosts like he does, and he gets ridiculed at school. So, yeah, basically it's one of your run-of-the-mill outsider story. However, things definitely take a huge change in the events of Norman's life when he soon has to encounter the history that surrounds the town and the witch that involves in it. The more he dives deeper into that mystery, the more he learns about the secrets behind the curse of the town and behind the book that he holds in his hands and why he must be reading the book at a certain day. It all turns out that the witch is none other than his ancestor. That's right, his ancestor goes by the name of Aggie, a young girl who also had powers like his, but unfortunately met an untimely demise due to the fearful villagers, and ultimately paid the price. Filled with vengeance, this sympathetic villain soon wanted to wreak havoc across the world, no matter who or what stood in her way. So overall, Paranorman has to rely on his relationships with whatever people who can be by his side while he's facing off with zombies and ghosts and other strange disasters that await him. Overall, Paranormal definitely has a very strong themes about self-acceptance, self-love, as well as learning to deal with fears properly and the consequences that can come with being ruled by fear constantly. And overall, I feel like this would feel like an ideal Halloween movie if you want to have some special lessons involved. So, with Corpse Bride, with Johnny Depp and Tim Burton, you know exactly where you're gonna go with this. And Corpse Bride is very interesting in terms of a tale. Actually, it's based off a Russian Jewish tale, believe it or not. So the story focuses on Victor, a very shy and mousy man who just simply wants to get married to a woman named Victoria and just want to get through a very difficult union between his family and Victoria's. Though you feel so bad for him because of what he has to put up with a very grumpy priest as well as some very two buttholes of in-laws. I know that it's harsh, but it's very true. I really don't like Victoria's parents. It does make you wonder why she's so nice while these two are that. And what really makes me hate them more, especially, is when they finally decide to marry her, their own daughter, to Lord Barkis. That's right. Lord Barkis is the main villain of this movie, as well as the fact that they never even once consider the fact that, oh, I don't know, he could be a psychotic serial killer? Anyway, Victor gets very discouraged and decides to go walking out in the woods to practice his lines, and, well, he put a ring on a corpse by accident, thus resulting in having the corpse bride, who now goes by the name of Emily, revealed later on, and thus crazy shenanigans begin. Emily is very a sympathetic character, because all she wanted to do was get married, and you feel so bad for her. Even the song Tears to Shed definitely helps flesh out her character and the sorrow she has to live with. On top of that, Victor understandably freaks out when he finds himself in a world of undead people. Here's the ironic thing. The world of the dead is more colorful than the world of the living. And that definitely says a lot about the society that Victor lives in general. Overall, this film definitely has a very interesting dynamic between these two. All Victor, Victoria, as well as Emily all have very wonderful and sympathetic characteristics that make you want to hug each of them. They definitely have a very enduring tale to tell in this film, as well as despite maybe some certain things that may bother people, like what Victor's actions, but at the same time, it does feel like a very enjoyable story, especially for Halloween. So, this is a very cherished classic, especially during the time of Halloween. And it's very sweet as well as spooky at the same time. Coraline is basically a claymation film that's also like that of Paranorman. This is actually based off a book by Neil Gaiman, who also has a similar title. It focuses on a young girl who finds herself in a strange world that's great at first, but then takes a terrifying turn. But one of the things that I felt like would have been worth mentioning on this list is that the film definitely has more interesting concepts that it was never addressed in the book, i.e. how the other mother learned about Coraline's situation. So, to top it all off, Coraline moved into a new home and of course didn't exactly like the situation she was in. She just wanted adventure in her life, especially considering that she moved away from her friends and her other family members. But when she soon comes across a mysterious portal, she finds a new and fantastical world filled with wonders and imagination beyond her wildest dreams. Not only that, but she encounters the other mother, the hostess of this world, who seems to be a tad too friendly, and probably the bun eyes definitely gives us that horrible sense that maybe we shouldn't really trust her too quickly. And I mean, what else could possibly go wrong? I mean, it's a really wonderful and fantastic, imaginative world where nothing can possibly go wrong. Ah! Well, apparently Coraline soon learns that, with the help of the black cat, that the other mother, or as the other children call her, the beldam, is actually a very dangerous trap, wanting to suck up her soul and take whatever's hers. It's by then that Coraline plays a very dangerous and dicey game for her own life as well as that of the others. Coraline really is a very fantastic film to watch, and it still has its jump scares and spooks, but it's not up to the point where you'll need to go to the emergency room. But Coraline definitely gives you that good edge of that you are in a sense of danger and you're fearing for Coraline's life, but yet you could also enjoy the whimsy setting as well as the colorful characters that bring this story to life. Oh, this is a very cherished Disney classic. And unfortunately, the sequels that have been produced after this one were not as noteworthy as this. Halloween Town definitely focuses on the concept a little bit about growing up, but the mystery is fantastic, as well as still gives off a nice sense of Halloween. So this focuses on a young girl named Marty, who still is struggling to appreciate Halloween. She's a little different from the rest of her family, but her mom definitely has issues of wanting to celebrate Halloween, mostly because it had something to do with the heritage, which we soon learn later on in the film. And of course, wanting answers, Marty, her intellectual brother Dylan, and the young sister Sophie, all three of them go into Halloween Town and soon encounter wonderful and colorful creatures that somehow still have pumpkins and Halloween stuff, a very own world of monsters where they can live their own lives without the fear of being ridiculed and hated upon by the humans. But despite this joyful reunion at this time, there was a sinister work at play. Not only was the special jack-o'-lantern that kept the city safe was gone, but things had been happening to the neighbors and the residents of Halloween Town, each of them slowly turning mean and nasty, and then suddenly vanishing without a trace. With a last resort, they all have to gather up whatever magical ingredients they have to take down the baddie, as well as soon creating Merlin's talisman, the only weapon of light that could withstand the mysterious dark figure who is threatening all of Halloween Town. Marty, along the way, also has to learn to value herself and become more confident with her skills of being a magical wizard, along with the help of her little sister Sophie, who's also representing her own powers as well and growing as a character. Even though the character arcs for each of these kids aren't exactly the most well written, you gotta give credit that there's probably more plot in this than most movies are nowadays. Halloween Town is probably the most underappreciated classic. The mystery is nice, though some people may complain that Sophie's probably more deserving as a main character than Marty is. You gotta at least admit the fact that this movie is very colorful, as well as try to provide a very nice and heartwarming Halloween story. I'm pretty sure many of you are not surprised. This is a very big classic, not only to Disney, but also to Tim Burton's one of his finest pieces in his career. So, to recap, this is a story about a skeleton, the king of Halloween, Jack Skellington. He suffers a little bit of depression, because he's been doing the routine for Halloween for years and feels like something's missing in his life. When he stumbles across Christmas Town, he gets really excited and wants to share what he's learned about Christmas Town so far with everyone in his village. However, Sally tries to convince him otherwise about how dangerous this plan is. Unfortunately, Jack was too obsessed with what he wanted out of his life, and thus pulled off some pretty crazy schemes. One of the worst things he could have done was practically having Rock, Shock, and Barrel actually taking Santa Claus, literally kidnapping him, and unbeknownst to him, having him sent to Oogie Boogie, the boogeyman, if you will. And pretty soon, all heck breaks loose in the worst way possible, and Jack has to set things right before things get really out of hand. So overall, this film earns #1 because it definitely has a lot of charm to it that's a bit spooky and scary, but at the same time, the scariness is not up to the point where you're going to be sent straight to the CPR. The intensive unit care. This film definitely is filled with very charming and colorful characters that, even though they use their scariness to fill a job, they actually are a wonderful group. As well as the story is very endearing, as well as something of the elements of Halloween and a little bit of Christmas. And that's why I put it at #1.
Evil.
No!
No!